Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we look back at the previous week in football and soccer, both, and tackle the things that we thought were interesting. I'm Tom Rennie. With me for the next 40 minutes or so is MLS legend, top broadcaster, and a man who survived, for some reason, doing 2 hot sauce dabs on last week's show. It's only Brian Dunseth. Hi, Dunny. You all right?
I'm doing well. I'm much better than the last time we got together. Some idiot thought he was smart enough and strong enough to do the last dab, which is 2 million plus Scoville of hot sauce on a chicken wing. I owed my bet. We lost Manchester United. I don't know. I said Manchester United lost against West Ham. Thank you. Now it's the Ruud Van Nistelrooy era, as well as Ruben Amorim, as I know we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I took my last dab, and then I got cocky. I got arrogant. I did it again. I put a big old last dab on there. I did it like across the whole chicken.
Insane.
And then I realized I was going to die. And I can't tell you how many text messages I got from Micah's teammates' whole family watching it on YouTube versus even my buddies from back home screenshotting me in obvious distress as I touched my tongue to the surface of the sun. I'm doing great. But let me tell you something, Rennie. As hot as it is going in, comes out the same way.
That's next week's challenge. Who can have the most pleasant sorry, Tim, after hot sauce in a bet that you did with yourself that I don't think I signed up to. I don't recall that. I'll check the tapes. But also, I went to I've got one. I'll show you one day. But I went to dinner with my friend a couple of nights ago, and they were like watching the show. And they were like, it was really clear second half of last week. We might need to re-record the second half of last week's show because they were like, Dunny was talking. Then suddenly I thought, I don't know what's happening now. He's just saying words. And you just sort of stopped and were like, so like, we don't know how you really feel about Erik ten Hag because you're in such emotional distress. We might need to do the whole show again. I don't know.
Factual
do you know what?
Man.
Let's never mention him again. Ruud van Temporary is in charge now, and God bless him. Right. A few things to get through this week. I do want to talk about. I am going to do a Lopetegui thing again later because just incredibly bad, bad. Doing a bit of that. I do want to ask you about MLS playoffs, MLS Cup, because Columbus Crew are out against New York Red Bulls, which is a hell of a story. Plus, we just spit at referees now as well, so that's cool.
Disgraceful.
I want to talk about that because that was I don't know what the ban is for that, but whatever it is, it's probably not going to be enough. But I wanted to start with Bournemouth. What a great story this weekend. Now, I've got this running theory, as you know, that you're going to need to get. Well, I thought it was 95 points to be Premier League champions based on the average. Do you have a hot sauce again? Based on it's just even thinking about it has turned you over.
It just came back. It just hit me right in the chest.
Everybody, hold on. It's coming. It's coming. In a minute, I'll just have to do a 30-minute rant just so you can go and bomb. But like,
it's a stupid box right there. See that black box? That's where all of it sits.
You need it. You need it every show just to store it and then dump it out the window. Throw it on a local boy running past. Hey, you there, boy. Dunk. But like, I think you need 95 points. But that was based on the metric that City were going to average what they have been averaging, which is around 90. Arsenal are losing games. Liverpool look quite good, but you never quite know. But City need to drop points for this to be even slightly interesting. I hadn't really realised it because apparently we don't include games that Man City lose in statistics when Man City lose. In the Champions League, they've gone 3 years unbeaten. He knocked out twice. Sorry, Tim, so it doesn't make sense. But they actually had got 11 months without losing a game in the Premier League, right? Which is absolutely incredible. Nearly a year since the last time someone beat them in the Premier League. And they go to Bournemouth. Look, they're without Rodri, and that's well established. Without Rodri, there is going to be a drop-off. But I want to talk about Bournemouth here because I'm looking at their team, right? And I've done a couple of Bournemouth games this year. I did the Arsenal game a couple of weeks ago, and they were down to 10, so you never quite know what you're watching. Mark Travers, who's Ireland's, I think, number 3, is in goal. Cook and Christie in midfield, who've been great this season. I'm not trying to be critical, but on paper, you would not buy these players. They'd probably get a loan to Ipswich, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, makes sense. Justin Kluivert didn't have much going on for him 18 months ago when he kind of made the move to the Premier League. Evan Nielsen's big money move, but there's a risk in it. Milos Kerkez is essentially a man of no reputation when he comes to the Premier League, who's now been linked with Liverpool to be the Robertson replacement, on and on. Smith at fullback has been there for like 10 years. Right? There's nothing on paper which suggests they're going to be able to play the way they do. Pep Guardiola comes out afterwards and says, we simply could not cope with Bournemouth and their press and the way they played. Now, I'm always, Dunny, a proponent of it's a player's game, not a coach's game. I always think that, though coaches are becoming more and more important, and we talk about philosophies and all this sort of stuff. You know, we do it ourselves on this show quite a lot. Am I wrong to think that it's still a player's game? Is it now a coach's game when you watch things like this?
Yeah, listen, you who used to make fun of Iraola pretty frequently here because
he still looks stupid in that turtleneck, and I will die on that hill.
There it is. I was waiting for it, but you will not subject Ruud van Nistelrooy to that same type of criticism because he looked fantastic.
Why is he wearing Erik ten Hag's clothes?
No. He's harkening back to the days of Sir Alex Ferguson. But this isn't about United. We'll get to United. No. Yeah, listen, I think perfect example of the conversation about giving managers time. On top of this, listen, we have these like broad strokes of simplicity when we talk about results and week in, week out, but also you just want to see a progression of a team. And over this last, 40 some games that Iraola has been in charge, you have seen that this team has not been complacent, that they do have a style and an identity, and that with and without the ball, they've shown moments of brilliance. And again, it's a one-off game, but it speaks to probably more the bigger conversation of what Bournemouth could potentially be. We were talking about today on SiriusXM with Miola and I, specific to Nottingham Forest. But Bournemouth is a good example. Burnley was a good example. Aston Villa is probably obviously in that conversation. Newcastle United was in that conversation. We did this thing where we've constantly talked about, okay, who can be the best of the rest? You've got your top tier teams. You know who those guys are. They're going to be your Champions League qualifiers. The expectations for them are going to be potential title contenders. But then who are the teams that can sneak into Conference League? West Ham, did it a few years ago. Who can be in the Europa League? Who can have this little semblance of success and then continue to build upon it? And that becomes another challenge onto whatever direction you're doing. But specific to that game, end line, cutback, pivot, finish. Evan Nielsen slipped in behind, these movements causing problems. The press, I thought Tyler Adams was fantastic in the 25-minute cameo as he continues to kind of work back in. And that little maliciousness with the way that he plays, always constantly yapping, closing down space, arguing for everything, winner mentality. It's a fun team, man. It's a neutral team that's a fun team to watch, and I'm intrigued to see how they continue to evolve and if they can kind of continue to be within that touching distance. And I know it's 10 games. I know we're going to talk about Arsenal. I know we're going to talk about Man City and Liverpool. But these 10 games, what we've seen, the snapshot, can you have a continuation after the November window through Boxing Day, mashup of matches, New Year's mashup of matches, and then come through, the end of January in a position where you've created the mentality that it becomes a more difficult task to go to Bournemouth, but also can you create the mentality that playing Bournemouth is a difficult task? And I think that'll be the next challenge for this group of players.
Before we get to the Man City of it, which I want to get to, two angles on this. Number one, everyone here in the UK where I am is now watching the American elections, right? It's a big story. And the news here, we've sent all of our TV anchors to America. Everyone's over there. All the big stars, BBC News at 10, Channel 4 News, whatever. They're doing the news, and our main News at 10 guy is in a bar in Pennsylvania or one of the swing states, whatever. Anyway, and he goes up to a bar and he's asking rando Americans what they think about the election. And this is where I'm raising it. Guy turns round and he's wearing a Bournemouth shirt. Random conversation. He's like, so are you going to vote for is that Bournemouth shirt you're wearing? And he's like, yeah, live on News at 10, biggest news program we have in the country. And he's a proper American. He's not like a Brit abroad. Got the accent and all that. And he's like, yeah, dude, love those fighting cherries. Just amazing. Just excellent. Excellent crossover, which I think you and I should take some credit for because he's got into football somehow. And it may well be through SiriusXM or the many TV stations you've worked on or whatever. So awesome. Loved it. That was excellent. Just to randomly see a Bournemouth fan American on the news. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, and this is going to go into Nuno and maybe Lopetegui later, but Andoni Iraola's obviously got a plan, and it's a good plan. Whatever but the players are executing it. And I wondered, when you watch these teams, and you've kind of mentioned this story before about sometimes you've got a good coach, sometimes you've got a crap coach, and sometimes you follow the plan and sometimes you ignore it because you know this guy's an idiot, right? Depends where you are in the cycle, if they're going to get sacked,
Factual statement,
reputation, all that sort of stuff. How important is it to have a good plan and execute it, or how important is it to just believe in each other as the group? Like, what's more important here? Because I watch Bournemouth and think it's all coming together at the same time.
Yeah. It's 50-50. It's as important as the other, to be quite honest with you.
Can you have one without the other and be successful?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, absolutely can. But it's about momentum, right? Let's use MLS playoffs, for example. Colorado Rapids 2 months ago were in third position in the Western Conference. They lost 7 of their last 8 matches. Real Salt Lake hasn't lost in 8 games, and they're out of the playoffs because they drew at home, lost in penalty kicks, and then they drew on the road at Minnesota, lost in penalty kicks. So try to verbalize that, to your team. Like, boys, we weren't playing bad. We had 3 shutouts in our last 4 matches, but we got dumped out of the playoffs because this is the format. You have to play to the format, whatever that is. Listen, there's moments. I use the example today. When things are going your way, maybe there's a deflection with 2 players coming together and you're awarded the throw in. You pop the ball off while the other team's arguing to the referee. Quick throw in, you're in behind, cut back ball, might take a deflection, right place, right time. Proactive, reactive, you finish it off, you got the goal. That's when everything's going right. When everything's going wrong, same situation, except you're the defending team. You felt as though you deserved it. Hold on, that's my effing ball. All of a sudden, he's going, oh, they turn around, start sprinting. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait, what just happened? These minuscule seconds are monumental factors in success and failure. And we do this thing where we all do it. We broad stroke. My team's playing horrible. My team's unbelievable. We're unstoppable. We're absolute shit. Sorry, Tim. But it really comes down to margins. It's fine lines. And when you're not doing well, and I've been on these teams, you like, even when the 4th official on the board goes up and you're like 5 minutes and you're like 5 more minutes. And you're like, I remember 2005, Real Salt Lake, Eddie Pope, U.S. men's national team, Eddie Pope. Like, we played next to each other and like 5 minutes come up and we're like, here we go again. And like, don't let our guys score. And like, that's because you felt like, and we're like, Tommy's on the field, Timmy's over there. Oh, there's that guy. And you're like, they're terrible. And you just know, like, we're not holding on. And you have a defeatist attitude. I mean, that's a factual statement of what happened in 2005. And you're just like, nothing goes right. Like, nothing. So yeah, it's everything is complementary to one another. This is where I think the influence, and I've been on this horse with Erik ten Hag for months and months and months now. And now we're seeing what's happening with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Whoever is your inspirational leader, that should be your manager in a lot of ways, because you want to be able to look to someone and create a self-belief before you even walk out on that field that you are capable of doing something. Imagine being in that locker room with Iraola and whatever his pregame speech was, or ever the collective unity of the players inside of that locker room. The hunter is Manchester City. They were also the hunted in that game. So, these are the magical moments in which a team now can use as a data point. And by the way, they probably should have scored 3 or 4 goals in that game as well. I mean, the first shot they concede is the 80th minute to Erling Haaland. Who would have had that as a bookie? That you would have thought that Erling Haaland is the first guy to get a shot off in the 80th minute for them being Man. And listen, Man City's dealing with injury. Absolutely. I'd still maybe throw an argument out there for Pep Guardiola not using his subs in a timely manner and rotating more, but we never really know what's happening behind the scenes. But I think this will be one of those data point moments for the fan base to remember forever. But it could have been a monumental moment that the club could have used and said, what was it? November 2nd, 2024, the historic win, 4-1 smashing of Man City, Pep Guardiola's Man City. I mean, that's how close they were, and that's the credit they deserve.
In terms of the title race, just a quick word on Manchester City. I mean, look, Rodri's missing. We know that's a big thing. We're not kind of reinventing the wheel by saying that. But how damaging is this loss? Are they still favourites to win the league for you? What do you make to it?
Yeah, it's not as damaging as the situation Arsenal finds itself in, because I feel as though 10 games in, Arsenal's already lost kind of that little wiggle room. You know, they don't have many more points that they can drop. I'm not concerned about City. Players will come back healthy. We'll see if Arne Slot and Liverpool can continue the run of form that they find themselves in. Maybe the biggest surprise right now is Nottingham Forest in the position they find themselves after 10 matches played. But I would just suggest been there, done that. Once they're healthy, they'll start chugging along in the right direction. And the head-to-head matchups will be important. Yeah. But I've always believed that it's games like this that determine the title race, not the head-to-head games where you inevitably split points, it feels like, but the games in which you have significant slip-ups and you lose 3 points.
A few things I want to get to there, from a bit more on Arsenal to Nottingham Forest. Before we do that, though, some light housekeeping. This is the Week in the Tackle podcast. You can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast, but you can also watch the program on YouTube. So go to YouTube right now, search for Week in the Tackle, and you will find us there. If you're at a friend's house, maybe later today, maybe you're dating somebody new and she goes to the bathroom, you got a few minutes, go onto her YouTube and write Week in the Tackle and subscribe. That's double subscriptions, and we'll talk you up to her when she's watching it solo later on after the date. Hope it went well. So there you go. That's our housekeeping for today. We're also in Vision on YouTube as well.
And Spotify as well. And Spotify. You can slide over and you can watch us on Spotify as well.
Slide over, baby. Slide into our DMs. Is that a thing still? I don't know. It's probably something new now.
We're both married. We're both married.
Teenagers can slide into whatever they like. I do what is legally acceptable. But yes, leave us a review. That's the other bit as well. Leave us a 5-star review. Loads of great 5-star reviews pushing us up the charts, which we very much appreciate. And if you can write a review, I know not everywhere lets you, but if you can, do write us a review. Read out a couple of funny ones last week. We did get another one that I simply cannot read.
It's so good. It's so good.
It was a 5-star review, but it felt very insulting to me.
Yes, it was very insulting to Rennie, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I would give it a 6-star review on a 5-star review just for how insulting you were of Tom Rennie.
Yeah, it was quite insulting. Anyway, thank you, I guess. Right, let's talk briefly about Arsenal. I mean, look, the momentum is definitely not there with Arsenal, right? The injury issues may be going a bit too Dunny. They're not playing great football. No one's really playing in the right position. They don't have a goal scorer. And then today, as we record the program on Monday, we get the news out of the blue, I've got to say, that Edu has resigned from his role as Arsenal sporting director. Been there since 2019. He wasn't invincible. He became sporting director in the back end of 2022. He is very much an Arteta ally and has been given the credit for buying the likes of Ødegaard and Declan Rice, though, to be fair, buying the best midfielder currently available in England for £100 million didn't necessarily take a transfer Svengali, but whatever. Arteta got the backing to do the transfer. That's the point, right? It feels a bit like the Arteta era suddenly running out of steam, Dunny.
I got to be honest with you. When I woke up this morning, I was completely shocked because I know you love when I say this, but I watched the Amazon All or Nothing Arsenal edition. That was during the timeline in which they were figuring out how to manipulate the situation with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And it felt like Edu and Arteta were lock in step. And this is after Edu had come from managing the Brazilian national team. It seemed as though with Josh Kroenke as well, Stan Kroenke's son, that all three were aligned in what they were trying to do. And it seemed like all three were well liked amongst one another. So I guess why? You know, the canaries in the coal mine start singing. And specific to situations like this, similar to Erik ten Hag's sacking, 48 hours later, there's obviously going to be an article in The Athletic that comes out that gives us a deep dive, whether, you know, it tells the story behind the story or it gives us a little bit more of behind the curtain of what's been going on. But for Edu, like, why now? You're so close. And in any other ulterior universe in which Pep Guardiola and this Man City doesn't exist, you know, Arsenal probably at a bare minimum has 2 Premier League titles in their trophy cabinet. So what is it? Why does it look this way? Why did it happen? What does the Kroenkes, Josh Kroenke, Stan Kroenke do? Because this is a really big opportunity, and you've at a bare minimum got to match what Edu has done. So who's the person that's available that could mimic something like that and take it to the next level and still have these artificial creative relationships amongst one another? And then to Edu, specific to this idea of joining up with Evangelos Marinakis, the owner of not only Nottingham Forest, but Olympiacos as well as Rio Ave in Portugal, this new model of multi-club ownership, whether specific to a country, specific to something like Manchester City Football Group, or now like we see out here in Salt Lake, where David Blitzer is majority owner of Real Salt Lake, investor of Crystal Palace, owner of Copenhagen, investor in Augsburg, Estoril in Portugal. Who else am I missing? And then owns like the Cleveland Guardians, NFL, NBA, NHL, just big time investors. Are you now having someone similar? Maybe I should have just dumbed it down and said, is this like Jurgen Klopp going to Red Bull? Is this going to be Edu going to be that version for Marinakis and his 3 football clubs? And I guess now that he quote unquote resigns, that would alleviate financially what the responsibility is of Arsenal to Edu. It frees him up to immediately join. And hopefully it's handshakes all around. I mean, you would want in a situation like this, for everyone to feel comfortable with the situation. But then I'm thinking, well, was he tapped up? Like, how did this conversation start? Like, was there asking for permission to speak with Edu on this role? And why was Edu the right person for this role? The one thing we know, Marinakis, while explosive at times, is willing to create a structure that's different, as we saw with what's his name, the referee last season. Help me out. How are you going, blank?
Oh yeah.
Clattenburg. Mark Clattenburg. There you go. Where he was kind of the in between. He was like the representative of a referee's perspective, but employed by Nottingham Forest. Well,
that was a real stupid idea, though. Interesting though.
Might be a stupid idea, but but still, like, okay,
creative.
So
innovative.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what this looks like from Arsenal's perspective and from Edu's perspective.
I mean, he's losing a loyalist in the boardroom, and another season without winning anything. The capitulation at the start of the season.
Maybe
I don't know. I mean, it only takes. I keep saying this. All these Arsenal fans have been so cocky for the last couple of years. It only takes a couple of losses. We are straight on Arsenal fan TV. Arteta out. We're better than this. All fan base are the same. You're no better than us. And you're going to be Arteta out if this continues by December. And suddenly Arteta is not being backed in the boardroom by his pal. On the subject of Marinakis, let's mention Nottingham Forest. Firstly, I just want to mention this Fabrizio Romano tweet because it really pissed me off. And I thought I'd mention it. Now, Romano is already like, okay, just okay. Well, you know everyone. Okay,
you don't like Fab? You're not a big Fab guy.
I don't like him so much, but I don't know what he sort of represents. Like, there's no surprise anymore. Like, he announces retirements before players are actually willing to do it because he's got all the info. I don't know. There's just like, can we have some mystery back? A little bit of mystery. Like, I don't know. You got to try and keep something out of his hands, otherwise everyone's got it. But he did this tweet.
Didn't you just retweet him?
Probably. He's got all the information. Probably.
About some Brazilian winger that you wanted to play in the midfield?
No, it wasn't him. It was someone else, and I'm not sure it's a real story. And I was just saying, can we buy someone who can run first before you get linked to another Brazilian striker? That's a whole other thing.
Okay,
might get
understood.
To. Probably not today.
I had you thinking for a second. You really had to go back. You're like, did I? Oh,
did I? Well, I mean, of course I have. I'm a sports journalist who does football. I got no choice. No one else has got any contact. It's all him.
True.
But like he'd done something, and it was like Nottingham Forest in the Premier League's top 4 for the first time since 1988. 2 notes. Number 1, there was no Premier League in 1988. And number 2, they finished 3rd in 1995. They literally finished there, but at that point there was no top 4 because the European money had not kind of kept flowing in. So that was sort of annoying. They had Brian Roy and Collymore was there at the time. Really good team. Steve Stone, Ian Wone.
Woney played with Woney.
Good players, good team. Mark Crossley in goal, all that. Stuart Pearce still playing. Anyway, they're really good, right? And I wanted to mention it because, I mean, they thrashed West Ham this weekend. Fine, we're going to get to the West Ham of it all. But irrespective of how crap they were, Forest were really good. And what's interesting about Forest is that when Wolves first came up, under Nuno, who is kind of his career went down a terrible pathway after the Tottenham move and going to Saudi, and it all went sour in the end out there. Nobody wanted him to come in to replace Steve Cooper, who was very popular at Forest, I'm told, from Forest fans. Only Brian Clough, it's what my mate said to me, was as popular with the Forest fan base as Steve Cooper, which seems wild to me, but he tells me that and I trust him on it. So fine, like more popular than like Frank Clark or people like that. But he comes in, Nuno, not particularly courted by anyone in particular, but this is the Wolves team. This is exactly what they used to do. The back line is fantastic. Milenkovic for 12 million is an insane buy from Fiorentina. That is proper transfer business. Ryan Yates in midfield is probably the least technically gifted footballer playing in the Premier League. Like, he is just like a rock on wheels. Like, he's just has no grace and no.
And you mean
talent.
this as a compliment. This is the best part. This is a Rennie compliment for those out there that are just joining us.
This is because, like, he is a total blunt instrument, massive blunt, and yet he is just exactly.
He's a massive blunt.
Massive blunt. But that's what they need in this team, because he tackles and he leads and he fights and he pisses you off and he gets in your face and he G's everyone up. And look, does the basics, right? But like, if he was a chef, Gordon Ramsay might make you something incredible. He'd make you ham sandwich and forget the butter. But it'd keep you going, right, through tough times. He's made something of Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, who've come in for cheap. Chris Wood scored 10 in 11, 32 years of age. We thought his career was over a couple of years ago. You know, I could go on and on about, like, all these players are overplaying, but also the way they play. Nothing is sophisticated. Like, look at how much Julen Lopetegui is overthinking everything. He thinks he's some sort of genius. And Nuno has gone, well, the fullbacks overlap, and if they don't overlap, they get back. And the two midfielders sit, and if one goes, the other one stays. The wingers get wide, and they cross to the big striker who scores. And then we outwork and outfight the opposition. Football is a really easy game, Dunny, at times, being overcomplicated by people who really should have studied history of art and written a thesis on Manet, you know? But Nuno is not like that. So a lot of time for him. What do you make of it?
Another beautiful complimentary rant by Tom Rennie. Well, first and foremost, let's go back to the days of promotion and coming out of the championship, and a team that was very heavy lone army type of feel to it. And the challenge was going to be, once they made it to the Premier League, they would have significant funds to spend, but they were also going to have to retool the entire team. And I had Marcos, our producer on Counterattack on Sirius, pull the numbers, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I believe the turnover was something between like 50 and 60 players turning over in the first 2 years, and up to, I think they're very close to Chelsea in terms of the complete turnover. That might be hovering right around 80 players per club. Now, obviously, nowhere near the same capital spend of what we've seen from Chelsea Football Club, but still, to show you that type of turnover, it's going to take a while. And the difference between Chelsea and obviously Nottingham Forest was that Nottingham Forest was flirting with that relegation conversation, and that's ultimately what cost Steve Cooper his job. And they did everything in their power not to fire Steve Cooper. I mean, remember, they fired a strength and conditioning coach, they fired a lead scout, then they fired Dane, who had navigated them perfectly through the promotion and championship in the first couple of years. You know, you had the influence of Marinakis' son being involved. It became very, very complicated and convoluted, quite frankly. Even last year, like the Gio Reyna, loan situation in January. Like, what was the point based on the style of play? Like, he was never going to play in the position that he was probably best at. So credit to Nuno, man. I mean, people forget, people shit on Nuno all the time. Sorry, Tim. But the reality is, when he got that Tottenham job, he was manager of the month, the first 2 months of the season. He needed time to, I guess, dismantle what maybe somebody else's system was and put together a system that looks similar to Wolves. And by the way, he like honestly just dumbed it down to like a late 90s, early 2000s squad.
Yeah.
You know, play a system, have an identity, and simplify the equation. Not everything has to be ticky-tock, 5-yard passes, playing out of the back, use your goalkeeper, make sure he gets 200 touches during a match. So yeah, credit to them, man. They're flying. And the question is, can they replicate what West Ham did a couple of years ago? Can they replicate what Aston Villa did a few years ago and figure out a way not just to get there, but to hold on to it.
I don't ascribe to the analysis that all footballers are stupid, right? I mean, some are, of course, because a lot of people in general are stupid, right? Young men are the stupidest of all. However, let's stop treating all footballers like they're clever enough to understand the inverted fullback role. Okay? Let's just not. Okay?
It's true.
Up, down, cross, tackle, work, 3 or 4 instructions, do them properly, work your bollocks off. Nottingham Forest. There you go. You wouldn't believe that, but that was a complimentary section from me. You wouldn't know that from the words that came out of my mouth, but that was actually, I was very positive there. Catch us up on MLS, loads going on, including, Dunny, Columbus Crew, the best team in the competition. No one really thought they'd go out to New York Red Bulls, lost the first leg, and even then, of these 3-leg playoffs, I think most thought they would find a way to at least get to the third game. When they go 2-1 down, they then pull it out the fire with the Chris Ramirez goal. You still think they're going to get through. I still thought they were going to get through. Out on penalties. Give us a view on just how surprising this is.
Yeah, they're not the only ones. I mean, Houston Dynamo, Real Salt Lake, similar. Here's the nuance to the conversation with the MLS playoff format. It all goes out the window. Yeah. The wild card is its own little animal. That becomes the singular one-off play-in game where you hope you have home field advantage because historically being on the road is very, very difficult in Major League Soccer. And what was the stat? Real Salt Lake hasn't lost a game in 8 matches, and yet they're out of the playoffs. Because all you have to do, you don't have to even win in the 90 minutes. You just have to win in penalties. And that counts as a, it's not, when it was funny, we were getting all these memorandums from the bosses and they're like, remember, Minnesota United did not win at Real Salt Lake. They won in penalties. The game was a draw. And so the other day, somebody said something like, and Charlotte FC gets their first playoff win in club history. And it's like, no, they didn't. It was a draw. And so this is the really interesting nuance to the MLS Cup playoffs is that teams that draw a game can then go to the playoffs or go into the penalty kick shootout and either win or lose. And that's going to determine who effectively won that game. So then you start thinking about tactics and shape and identity and defensively on the road versus being at home and all these things. Credit to everything that the New York Red Bulls have turned into at this stage of the season because they're really difficult to break down. And there were some heroic performances against Columbus in both legs. Coronel, the goalkeeper in particular, has been phenomenal. On the flip side, if you had to choose a game based on the style of play that you enjoy watching, it's tough not to look at Wilfried Nantz's Columbus Crew because they are extremely fun to watch. But this is the big blowout. This is the big surprise. I remember saying to you maybe 2 weeks ago, the next round, it was going to be Cincinnati against NYCFC. It was New York Red Bulls against Columbus. I said to you, I very well predict Columbus and Cincinnati is a rematch once again. I go, but then again, I could see New York Red Bulls against NYCFC in a Hudson River derby between these two teams.
Yeah.
Because what's different is the playoff format, man. You just don't know. Every year there's a massive upset. Even last night, who would have thought Atlanta United, who were terrible for a majority of the season, who get in on decision day winning in Orlando, then have to go that Tuesday. So Saturday they play in Orlando. Tuesday they play in Montreal, win in penalties. Friday they go down to Miami. They end up losing 2-1. And then they win at the weekend 2-1 at home against Inter Miami to force a game 3 against Lionel Messi, Jordi Alba, Busquets, Suarez, and company. There's been some massive, massive surprises. The one that wasn't, Colorado Rapids. I think it was 7 losses in their last 8 matches. At one point 2 months ago, they were 3rd place within touching distance of the 2nd place position. Chris Armas up for Coach of the Year, Manager of the Year. They dropped like a stone. Lost 5-0 at home or on the road at LA Galaxy. End up losing 4-1 at home. Ricky Pooch, 2 goals, couple assists. Been incredible to watch. Minnesota United, Eric Ramsey, by the way, formerly of Chelsea Football Club, Manchester United, and Wales assistant. 32, 33 years of age. He's been phenomenal. The way that Minnesota United team played. Tio Max and I were out at Minnesota at Allianz Field. First playoff game since 2000. First real, I mean, that was COVID. First real fan playoff game at Allianz Field. It was extraordinary. They pushed past Real Salt Lake for a date in 2 weeks' time, 2.5 weeks' time with Minnesota United. So all to play. Seattle's through, LA Galaxy's through, Minnesota United's through, New York Red Bulls are through. Now, who gets through on Friday night? Max Brados and I will be on the call. LAFC against Vancouver, game 3. And then Inter Miami. That winner of Inter Miami Atlanta will host the winner of Charlotte Orlando City. By the way, last piece of news and notes: if Inter Miami does not make it to an MLS Cup final, that means that they whoever comes out of the East will go to LA, and it'll be either LAFC or LA Galaxy, most likely coming out of the West. So Columbus off the table for hosting an MLS Cup final. It's either going to be in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, or it's going to be out in Los Angeles.
Do you keep your fingers crossed because if you're going to the final, you get to go somewhere nice? Like you haven't got to go to Columbus again.
I'm partying. I
know you're the mayor of Columbus, so you know,
dude, you and Miola did the same thing today. Just absolutely murdered me on the show. He's like, you know what's great? You know why I don't gotta go back to Columbus? It's because I don't have to stop every 30 yards, so Brian Dunson could talk to somebody. Hey, look at these hands, Wreck-It Ralph. Oh, sorry, Tony. He's gonna punch me next time.
That's the best impression you've ever done. On the 2 years we've done this show, that was the best one you've ever done. That was exceptional. Before we get to heroes and villains, and this might be a villain, I don't know, but I got to ask you separately, the Hector Herrera spitting thing.
That was my villain, yeah.
I just, let's do it now, and we can do it because it's a big thing. And while we're on the MLS bit, like spitting, I can't.
It's gross, disgraceful.
I've never spat at somebody, and I've been involved in arguments. You've been a football player at top level for a long time, right? It's never come to me. It's never something sort of crosses my mind to do.
I punched somebody.
But punching someone's different, right?
No. When somebody spit on me once, I punched them.
Forgive me, right? I mean, but I understand like hitting people. I get it, like psychologically. But like, I mean, I'm thinking about it in football. Patrick Vieira did it to Neil Ruddock once. Arthur Masuaku did it in a Wigan game. There's West Ham examples that come to me, but it sort of happens. But like Hector Herrera, if you haven't seen this, walks behind the referee. I think it's just booked him.
Yeah. Armando Villarreal is the referee's name. He's a very well-respected, high-level referee.
But then he sort of spits at his like socks and shorts as he's walking away. And then
he's booked.
I think the VAR tells him.
Yeah, they're going in opposite directions. So Hector Herrera is going back to get into his defensive setup where his position is. He's been booked. And as he walks past Armando Villarreal, who's still looking forward and he's putting the card away, Hector Herrera turns, he looks back, and then he looks at the ground and he spits a loogie behind him. And so VAR intervenes and says, yo, you need to come take a look at this. So just by the way, spitting falls into the same category as abuse and assault in referee language. So Brian Vera from Real Salt Lake spit in the direction of Michael Boxhall, got a 3-game suspension. I expect MLS and pro referees to come down extremely hard on Hector Herrera. By the way, Hector Herrera probably should have got sent off in Seattle. Coco Carrasquilla, they got in a scuffle, hands to face in the neck. Hector Herrera did the same thing, got away with it. They didn't look. Listen, these guys in a lot of ways are superheroes to kids and fans out in the world. I'm in a city in Salt Lake City where a referee was punched, he was knocked out cold, and he died. Kid went to jail for murder. What we forget in the moment when we play at the highest level and we're professional athletes is that situations like this will absolutely be mimicked. And when and I was on my high horse about this with the way managers were screaming and yelling at referees. We have to figure out this line of the competitive fire, and I'm guilty of it. I got a red card heading into, the potential of, the match that was going to put us in the Olympics, not put us in the Olympics. You have to understand, even with the red mist flowing, that there's lines that cannot be crossed. He crossed a line that's a disgraceful line for a player of his magnitude and experience. They are out of the playoffs. I would be shocked if he didn't get more, if he got less than 5 or 6 games at a bare minimum. I would assume the MLS Players Union is going to support and try to protect and minimize the suspension. But that's a humdinger. I could not believe what I saw in the moment. And good on Armando Villarreal. He immediately walked over to the monitor. I'm not sure who VAR was to indicate, like, by the way, he did this behind your back. You need to come see this, because it has no place in the game whatsoever at any level. So hopefully the decision makers in charge come down heavy-handed on Hector Herrera.
And it's an aside, and it's not strictly linked, but this is why I can't get into it too much here. We're nearly out of time, but like the Jose Mourinho stuff is not very funny to me. Like it's funny that Mourinho this weekend done some 8-minute rant about the referees, and he goes on the field and he's squaring up to Trabzonspor players as Fenerbahce manager and all that. But I keep thinking about Anthony Taylor and his family at the airport after the Roma game where they lost in the Europa League, I think, wasn't it, the following year of the Conference League? And just like, you know, I'm all for criticizing referees, absolutely, in conversation, and things need to change, and they should do press conferences, and we should have those conversations. But like, there really is a line, and the whole like the system is corrupt stuff, when you can't prove it in any way, I just think it's so dangerous, and it leads to things like Hector Herrera doing what he did, because there's something in there. In my view, it's only my opinion, but I think there's something in there where he's gone like, this is so unfair to me, it's unjust. Something is unjust to me, and I have the right to do this.
So Benny Olsen called over Armando Villarreal, and Armando Villarreal was explaining to Benny Olsen's the head coach of Houston Dynamo, my former teammate, and was explaining to him why he sent him off. And Benny kept saying, "That's 5 red cards. That's 5 red cards." And if we were having an open conversation with Benny, I would say, "Yeah, but Benny, that's a deserved red card for Hector Herrera, Ache. That's a deserved red card for Coco Carrasquilla. Like, I know there's factors that are going against what you're trying to achieve, but this is self-inflicted. Like, this is not any way, shape, or form. There's no historical evidence to say that the referees are against you, and I don't even think he's implying that the referees are against them. But these are monumental moments that not only affect that game, but it affects the next game, and it affects your playoff run, affects your season. Houston could have been a team that easily got by Seattle. I mean, back-to-back penalty shootouts. Houston, one rub of the grain either way, they're through to the next round. And instead, they find themselves in this situation where they've played a man down for the better part of 25, 35 minutes in both games. The only person responsible are those that need to take responsibility for their actions.
If you think there's a conspiracy against you, prove it, get the evidence, or put the phone down. That's what I would say to everyone.
Or lose in a court of law like Marinakis.
Yes, also do that as well. So that's Dunny's villain, Hector Herrera. For me, I could have done 45 minutes on this, and thankfully I'll be doing some West Ham podcast this week too, Ben.
Here it comes.
But I would like to talk again about Julen Lopetegui, because now last week when they beat Man United, right, I asked Lopetegui, as you know, I said, like, what did you change from first half to second? And I was trying to be complimentary. If I was being unprofessional, I'd have said, you were in the first half. Sorry, Tim. How'd you fix it in the second, right? But
we haven't been cursing, by the way. We haven't been cursing at all.
But he's not here today, and I know he's got a lot of work to do, so I'm trying to be nice.
That.
Oh,
sorry, Tim.
I tried. Anyway, the West Ham rant's coming up now, so he knows he's buggered. But like,
I'm just reading your notes.
Second half of the game against Man United, it looked like he stumbled upon his team, right? You've all seen it. Your manager don't know what he's doing. It's the early weeks. He's whatever. He's got injuries, and suddenly, I've stumbled on something here. This works. Bloody works second half against Manchester United. So what does he do the next week? Change everything. Like, massively overthink everything. And I know Souček was injured. Fine, that happens, or he's unwell. But beyond that, you can find a replacement. The lineup didn't make sense from the outset, right? 3-4-3 from nowhere, which is really 5 at the back from nowhere. Again, Aaron Wan-Bissaka has not played right back once for West Ham. It is driving me up the wall. He is a right back. Play him at right back. I'm not saying he hasn't been good running forward, but you don't buy one of the best defensive right backs in the country and make him play in midfield. It's insanity to do that. Sufao is a better wing back than Wan-Bissaka because he's a better crosser of the ball. So you've already got him if you were going to do that, so it doesn't make sense to do it. So that doesn't make any sense. So the lineup is terrible, right? Bad lineup, badly put together. I'm assuming Antonio must have been injured. Otherwise, why would you play that front three? Why are you still playing Paqueta, who is so painfully out of form? He'd be subconsciously begging to be dropped. He doesn't want to play football
Calvin
right
Phillips-esque.
He is going down washout lane like Calvin just sent off Phillips. and he needs a nice long break.
What was he
Out
doing?
of the team. Ridiculous, right? But like, Paqueta's playing again makes no sense. He doesn't put any effort in tracking back, which leads to the first Nottingham Forest goal because suddenly he's on the wing. Suddenly Paqueta's on the right wing. From where? When? Why? Why have you done that? I've never seen him play there. Suddenly he's starting on the right wing. It's insane. It's so stupid. And then he doesn't know where he's doing. He's not tracking back, and it's all like leads to the goal. But like, you've got that going on. You've then got Guido Rodriguez, who like just like he makes Enzo Fernandez.
Guido.
He makes Enzo Fernandez look fast, like totally unsuited to this league, and he's got no one next to him who can move around. He should have been sent off, by the way, for a tackle on Gibbs White, but got away with that. That was a clear red. Awful, despicable tackle because Gibbs White is, you know, fast. Because it's the Premier League and he couldn't catch him, and so he did a foul. Then Edson Alvarez, right? Edson Alvarez, Mexico's finest. Okay.
He's so good.
3 weeks ago, in the Carabao Cup at Anfield, on a yellow card, he did a terrible tackle on a yellow and got a red. 3 weeks later, in this league game, on a yellow card, it was 5 defenders against 1 attacker. I think it was Hudson-Odoi. He wasn't in, right? He wasn't through, and he does this ridiculous diving challenge and then goes to his Instagram and he's like something like, oh, I'll learn from this. You did it 3 fucking weeks ago.
There it is.
Him and learned absolutely nothing. And then Carlos Soler comes on. Carlos Soler is nothing. He is a gust of air. He is billowing smoke. He is just like, he is a barbecue that's not turned on. He is unlit charcoal, right? He is a broken tap. He is an air conditioning unit thrown into the sea. Yeah? He is a chocolate spoon when you're trying to eat soup, right? He is nothing. He is a non-entity of a footballer. He just looks like someone who should be in the window of an Abercrombie and Fitch selling boxes. And that's it. You don't get additional points for being gorgeous, Carlos, okay? He's awful. Does nothing. And yet Rodriguez and Soler, in the mind of Lopetegui, is better than one James Ward-Prowse, who last season played 53 games, set up like 10 goals and scored like 6. Just on and on and on. I really could go on this. Everything Lopetegui has done so far has had to be fixed mid-game. His starting lineups are awful. If he doesn't get the second half right, they capitulate. That's 3 now. Ridiculous red cards they picked up for terrible discipline. And look, I think he'll stay all season because they're not bottom of the league. They're not Gary O'Neill, Wolves, 3 points or whatever. But like, Christ almighty, I cannot believe how bad it's gone. I just can't believe how bad they are. I'm genuinely shocked by how bad they are.
Yeah, I again, some idiot here predicted boldly that they would end up in 4th position, that they would be maybe the Nottingham Forest of the 2024-25 season. What a moron that guy is. I at this point, like, my banter with you is fun because you and T.O. Max are the West Ham fans in my life. But I feel sorry. I feel sorry for you. Like, it's to the point where, like, I try not to banter too much with you because I don't want you to hate me and not be my friend. But this is painful.
Yeah, our WhatsApp chat doesn't suggest that, bud. But cheers, yeah.
I mean, I still want to banter and be creative and wind you up, which I do. But yeah, I do feel like I've got to pick and choose my battles with which time I want to wind you up.
What on earth are they doing? Don't get it. Yeah. Don't get it. If he got sacked after Everton on Saturday, he'd have himself to blame. He looks completely clueless. Listen, briefly, let's do some heroes. Who's your hero of the week?
It's actually going to be Ruud van Nistelrooy. I know. Why I say that is I knew it was going to be Ruud van Nistelrooy. Did you really? Did you know?
I sensed it in my blood.
Yeah, listen, I just, the group looked fun, man. I was texting with Andrew Williams, former producer at Counterattack, super Chelsea homer. That game was a really good game. It was a really high level back and forth game between Man United and Chelsea. It was
it's like a preseason friendly.
No. Come on. It was fun. They for the first time, well, for these last now 2 matches, that I actually want to watch play.
Mm.
They're possessing, building out of the back quickly, not just f***ing around with the ball side to side. I don't know if I even say sorry, Tim.
Mm.
Ugarte or Ujarte, as they were saying on the broadcast, alongside Casemiro. It's a good partnership. I thought Casemiro was left for dead. You're starting to see, I think, what United is capable of doing. Obviously, it's still a long way off. Chelsea looked fantastic, by the way. And for Ruud van Nistelrooy, I was thinking about this. To be the assistant coach, you have a certain amount of responsibility in kind of the relationships, right? Arm around the shoulder, communicative, working through with Xerxes and Holland and Garnacho in the finishing final phase of play. But that first team talk or these last two team talks at Old Trafford, I just wonder how much he and they tapped into him being a living legend for the club. The spiritual leader of understanding what it meant to play for that group and play for those fans in the heyday of what was kind of that Sir Alex Ferguson reign that we always kind of harken back to. Back when Sir Alex or nothing's been like Sir Alex. Well, he's the linchpin and the link to that group. So the importance of recalibrating a new face, a new identity, maybe not the dark cloud of whatever was happening over Ten Hag hovering for the group. The maybe the rainbow or the sunlight that's at the end of the clouds with Ruben Amorim coming in a couple weeks time or a few days time. I just and by the way, he looks sharp, man. He looks sharp on the sideline. I like the fit. I like the look. And it was great to see like emotion, like finally somebody. It's such a front facing position, these managers. Yeah. And we like live and die and we want to feel the energy of a guy that is representing whatever the club that we represent. So however it looks, and it feels like he's verbalizing that he does want to stay, obviously still wants to be a manager and wants to be a front facing manager in whatever opportunity he gets. But you can tell it was just nice to see how much the club meant to him and how easily he was capable of kind of verbalizing it, because it's been a long time since I think Manchester United fans have felt great about or felt strong about what's happening around the group. It's a low bar.
Yeah, I mean, I just keep thinking about this line I read from the journalist John Bruin in The Guardian this morning, which was wash the nostalgia out of Manchester United's system. And I feel like watching the game and listening to the whole Ruud thing from the crowd, Ruben Amorim, I'm more convinced than ever that he is a terrific appointment, because if Van Nistelrooy had stayed for the rest of the season, it would have been another pure nostalgia, dusty old Man United season. They're desperate to stop thinking about 2004. So I think it's a great appointment.
And I do like the way Amorim has handled himself in this whole process.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what he brings to the table as, a former player at a high level. And then now as a manager that's had a certain amount of success, not just in Portugal, in the league itself, but I think with his system and his identity and kind of that, he's got the ruthlessness, but he's got a great disposition is what I'd say. That's what I'm excited about.
Seems like a good fit. Listen, really, really briefly, mine hero of the week. I'm just going to pick out someone for you. Is Leif Davis. Leif Davis of Ipswich Town. This goal is going to get buried because of the amount of stories and who he scored for and the fact they didn't win. They're still without a win and all of that. I know it's such a cliche, but if Lionel Messi had scored this goal, we'd be about it on every show in the world. Tim. It's absolutely incredible. It's a ball from the right to left. It is a left back coming forward, driving forward. It's shades of Di Canio against Wimbledon all those years ago. It's similar to maybe what Bruno Fernandes did against Tottenham. His famous sort of volley that he does. I think Ronaldo did one as well. Like, it's dropping. He's on the run. He's in midair. He hits it on the volley, left-footed, first Premier League goal. A 24-year-old sort of journeyman fullback who's trying to make his way in the Premier League, become a player at this level. It's such an exceptionally brilliant goal. And again, if it was scored by someone of higher profile, then it would be more of a story, but it wasn't. So he gets my nod there on the program. I thought it was fantastic.
By the way, I just got the scared out of me. Sorry,
what happened?
Tim. There's a deer that just literally walked. My window's right in front of me to my right. There's this young little deer that just walked straight across and popped up and just looked at me like, "Oh, what are you doing in there?" Just scared the crap out of me. And then he just took off as
Oh.
he heard my voice talking. I'm gonna see if I can see him again. Hi, little buddy. What's up, bud? How are you?
Do you live at a petting zoo?
No, I live on the mountain. It's right there.
You need to move back to civilization, bud.
Hey, what's up, guy?
You need to go somewhere where there's bright lights and high beer
know.
prices.
I'll feed you.
If there's a deer in the garden, I would suggest that humans shouldn't live there. But that's like most of America.
Well, you know what comes along with the deer?
What?
The mountain lions.
Oh Christ!
Yeah, they killed 2 deer next door on our property next door.
Well, sadly, this is Brian Dunsett's last podcast because he's about to get eaten by wild animals. So we thank him for his efforts on today's program, the very tasty MLS legend that is. I'm Tom Rennie, more sinewy, don't eat me. Tim Horsey produced the program. I don't know. It's available as a podcast. You can watch it on YouTube this week in the tackle. See you next time.
See you, Tim.